My daughter planned to sell my house, put me in a trashy care home, and keep half the money. Can you imagine hearing your own child betray you like that? My name is Leonard. I'm 71 years old, and I just heard my daughter Margaret say those words to her husband, Derek, through my phone. She thought she'd hung up our call, but the line stayed open. I sat in my kitchen in Phoenix, listening to them plan my future like I was already dead. Social services will believe anything we tell them, Derek's voice came through clear as day. Old man living alone, probably unsafe. We just need to make it sound convincing. Margaret laughed. Dad's house is worth $400,000. Even after we pay for the cheapest nursing home we can find, we'll have plenty left over for our mortgage. How far would you go to protect your home and dignity? Stay tuned to Jake's Revenge to find out how I fought back. I'd raised this girl, changed her diapers, walked her to school every morning for 6 years after her mother died. Now she was plotting to steal my home and warehouse me somewhere I'd rot. The key is getting guardianship, Derek continued. Once we have legal control, he can't fight us on anything. My hand found the record button on my phone. Something my grandson had taught me last year when I complained about telemarketers. I kept listening, kept recording while my heart hammered against my ribs. I already called social services once, Margaret said. Told them I was worried about his mental state. They said they'd send someone to do a wellness check. Perfect. We'll build a case. Memory problems, can't take care of himself, unsafe living conditions. I looked around my clean kitchen, at the bills I'd organized that morning, the grocery list I'd written in neat handwriting. Nothing wrong with my mind or my house. But I understood now why Margaret had been asking strange questions during our weekly calls, testing me, looking for ammunition. The social worker I talked to seemed sympathetic, Margaret said. Janet Rodriguez. She sounded like she'd work with us. Janet Rodriguez. I knew that name. We'd served together on the church fundraising committee 3 years back. Good woman. Tough but fair. Once Dad's placed somewhere, Derek said, we can sell the house fast. Cash offer. No inspections. Be done with this whole mess. Mess. That's what 43 years in the same house meant to them. What my life with their mother meant. What raising Margaret as a single father meant. I hung up the phone and sat in the quiet. Outside, the desert sun was setting, painting my backyard orange and purple. This house held every memory I had of my wife, every Christmas morning with Margaret as a little girl. They wanted to erase all of it for money. But they'd made one mistake. They'd underestimated the old man. Could I outsmart their cruel plan? Watch Jake's Revenge to see how I turned the tables. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I needed. Janet Rodriguez answered on the second ring. Leonard, how nice to hear from you. It's been too long. Janet, I need to talk to you about something serious. My daughter Margaret called your office about me. There was a pause. Yes, she did. Leonard, are you all right? She seemed very concerned about your well-being. I'd known Janet for 15 years since she'd moved to Phoenix and started working for the county. She'd been a good friend to my wife during her final illness, visiting regularly, bringing soup and comfort. After the funeral, Janet had checked on me periodically, making sure I wasn't drowning in grief. I'm fine, Janet. But Margaret isn't who you think she is. I told her everything. The conversation I'd overheard, the recording I'd made, their plan to fabricate evidence of my incompetence. Janet listened without interruption, her breathing the only sound on the line. Leonard, that's elder abuse. Financial exploitation with intent to commit fraud. I know what it is. I spent 30 years as a bookkeeper. I understand money and I understand people who steal it. That was my life before retirement. 30 years keeping books for West Electric, making sure every penny was accounted for. I'd caught embezzlers before. Seeing how they operated, how they justified their theft, Margaret was no different from any of them, except she was my daughter. What do you want to do? Janet asked. I want to protect myself, and I want to make sure no other old person gets fooled by her lies. Margaret hadn't always been like this. As a child, she'd been kind, thoughtful. But somewhere along the way, money had become more important than family. Maybe it started when she married Derek 5 years ago. He worked for some tech company in Tucson. Always complaining about their finances, their mortgage, their credit card debt. Last Christmas, Margaret had walked through my house differently, not visiting, but evaluating, commenting on the original hardwood floors, the updated kitchen, the mature fruit trees in the backyard. I thought she was just appreciating the home where she'd grown up. Now I realized she'd been appraising it. There are things we can do, Janet said. Ways to document your competency, establish a paper trail. But Leonard, once your daughter finds out you're fighting back, this could get ugly. It's already ugly, Janet. I just didn't want to see it. The warning signs had been there for months. Margaret's increased interest in my finances, questions about my will, my bank accounts, my insurance policies, Derek's comments about how expensive it was to maintain an older home, how senior communities were really nice these days. Even their visits had changed. Less time talking, more time examining. Margaret would open my refrigerator to check if I had enough food. But I'd seen her eyes calculating, looking for signs of neglect she could report. "Can you come by tomorrow morning?" Janet asked. "We'll start building your case." The next morning, I woke before dawn and sat on my back porch with coffee, watching the desert come alive. This house had been my fortress for over 4 decades. Now, it felt like something I had to defend. Janet arrived at 8 a.m. sharp, carrying a briefcase and wearing the serious expression I remembered from our committee meetings. She wasn't just my friend today. She was a professional, and she was here to work. "First thing," she said, settling at my kitchen table, "I need to hear that recording." I played it back for her, watching her face tighten with each word. When Margaret's voice said, "cheapest nursing home we can find," Janet closed her eyes and shook her head. "This is clear evidence of intent to defraud. But Leonard, you need to understand what you're up against. Your daughter has already filed a report claiming you're showing signs of dementia. She says you've been confused during phone calls, forgetting conversations, asking the same questions repeatedly. All lies. But I understood how convincing Margaret could be. She'd inherited her mother's gift for storytelling. Her ability to make people believe whatever she wanted them to believe. What else did she say? That you're isolated, not maintaining the house properly, possibly not taking medications correctly. She painted a picture of a man in cognitive decline who needs immediate intervention. I felt something harden inside my chest. This wasn't just theft. It was character assassination. Margaret was trying to erase who I was. Turn me into a helpless old fool who needed her to make decisions for him. "Here's what we're going to do," Janet continued. "I'm scheduling you for a comprehensive cognitive assessment with Dr. Patricia Williams. She's the best geriatrician in Phoenix, and her evaluations carry serious weight in court." Court? If your daughter follows through with her guardianship petition, yes, we need documentation proving your mental competency is excellent. We also need witnesses who can testify to your independence and decision-making ability. I thought about my neighbors, the men I played cards with Thursday nights, the people at church who'd known me for years. Margaret rarely visited, but when she did, she made a show of checking on me, fussing over imaginary problems, creating drama where none existed. "There's something else," Janet said. "I'm going to arrange for you to meet with James Patterson at Elder Rights Legal Aid. He handles these cases, and he's very good." I nodded, but my mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about Margaret as a 10-year-old, crying because she'd broken her mother's favorite vase. How she tried to hide the pieces, then lied about what happened, then finally confessed through tears when the truth became obvious. She was still that scared little girl, still lying to avoid consequences. But now the stakes were my home, my independence, my dignity. I wouldn't let her break me like she'd broken that vase. "Janet," I said, "I want to do more than just defend myself. I want to make sure she faces consequences for what she's trying to do." Janet smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Leonard, that's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. 3 days later, I sat in Dr. Williams' office completing the most thorough mental evaluation of my life. Memory tests, problem-solving exercises, cognitive assessments that would have challenged someone half my age. When I finished, Dr. Williams smiled and told me my results were excellent for any age, exceptional for 71. Mr. Leonard, your daughter's concerns appear to be unfounded. Your cognitive function is sharp, your memory is intact, and your reasoning skills are well above average. I had her put that in writing. The same day, I met with James Patterson at Elder Rights Legal Aid. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with the intense focus of someone who'd seen too many families destroy each other over money. Your daughter made a strategic error, he told me after reviewing my case. She moved too fast, made claims that are easily disproven. If she'd been patient, more subtle, she might have built a convincing case. But this is sloppy. What's our next move? We document everything. Your independence, your competency, your social connections, and we gather evidence of her fraudulent reporting. That's when Janet told me the rest of Margaret's plan. She's been calling our office regularly, Janet explained during our meeting the following Monday. Each time she escalates her claims. First, it was concern about your memory. Then it was worry about your ability to drive safely. Last week she reported that you'd left the stove on overnight and nearly started a fire. I haven't used my stove in 3 days. I've been eating out. I know. We checked with your neighbors. Mr. Harrison across the street confirmed he saw you leave for dinner at Romano's restaurant Friday evening and return 2 hours later. No fire department calls to your address. No emergency services. Margaret was fabricating emergencies, trying to create a pattern of dangerous incidents that would justify immediate intervention, but she was lying about things that could be verified, leaving a trail of false reports that would ultimately destroy her credibility. She's also been calling your bank, James added, claiming to be concerned about unusual account activity, asking questions about your access to funds. My stomach turned. I'd banked at Desert Valley Credit Union for 25 years. The same tellers had been helping me for decades. They knew me, trusted me, understood that I managed my own finances competently. What did the bank tell her? Nothing. Thankfully, they followed privacy protocols. But Leonard, her inquiries are documented. It shows a pattern of someone gathering information for financial exploitation. The trap was bigger than I'd realized. Margaret wasn't just planning to steal my house. She was systematically undermining my credibility with every institution in my life, the bank, social services, potentially my doctors, my neighbors, anyone who might stand in her way. There's something else, Janet said. She's requested an expedited guardianship hearing. Claims you're in immediate danger of harming yourself or others due to cognitive decline. When? Next Friday, 1 week from today. My hands started shaking. 7 days. That's all the time I had to defend 43 years of independence. Don't panic, James said. We're ready for this. Dr. Williams' evaluation proves your mental competency. Your neighbors will testify to your independence. The bank will confirm your financial responsibility. And we have that recording of her admitting her real motives. But I could see the worry in his eyes. Guardianship hearings were supposed to protect vulnerable adults. Judges erred on the side of caution, even with evidence, even with witnesses. There was a chance Margaret's lies might sound more convincing than my truth. What if she wins? Then she becomes your legal guardian. She controls your finances, your housing, your medical decisions. You'd have the right to appeal, but the process could take months. Months locked away in whatever facility Margaret chose, months watching strangers live in my house, sell my belongings, erase my life. James, I said, I need you to understand something. I'd rather fight this battle and lose than give up without trying. He nodded. Then we fight, but Leonard, we fight smart, and we make sure that when this is over, your daughter faces consequences for what she's tried to do. The next morning, I discovered how deep Margaret's deception really went. Janet called at 7 a.m. Leonard, we have a problem. I pulled your social services file to prepare for the hearing. Your daughter has been filing reports for 6 months, not 6 weeks. 6 months. While she'd been calling me every Sunday asking about my health, pretending to care about my well-being, she'd been building a case against me with social services. What kind of reports? Progressive cognitive decline, claims you've been repeating yourself during conversations, forgetting family members' names, asking the same questions multiple times. She's documented alleged incidents going back to October. October, right after Derek lost his job at the tech company, right when their financial pressure started building. None of that is true. I know, but Leonard, she's been methodical. Each report builds on the previous one, showing a pattern of declining mental function. To someone who doesn't know you, it looks convincing. I sat down hard in my kitchen chair. This wasn't opportunistic greed. This was calculated, premeditated exploitation. Margaret had been planning to steal my life for half a year. There's more, Janet continued. She's also contacted your primary care physician, Dr. Morrison. Told him she's worried about your memory. Asked if he'd noticed any concerning symptoms. Dr. Morrison had been my physician for 12 years. He'd never mentioned any concerns about my mental state because there weren't any. But Margaret was trying to plant seeds of doubt everywhere. What did he tell her? Nothing, due to privacy laws, but he called me yesterday after she contacted him again. He wanted to know if there was really a social services investigation because your daughter made it sound official. The manipulation was breathtaking. Margaret was using official concern to legitimize her lies, then using those lies to generate more official concern, a self-reinforcing cycle of deception. That afternoon, James Patterson called with more disturbing news. I've been investigating your daughter's background. Leonard, she's done this before. What do you mean? Derek's mother, Patricia, she died 2 years ago. Before her death, Derek and Margaret obtained power of attorney, claiming Patricia was developing dementia. They sold her house, moved her to a nursing facility, and managed her finances until she passed. I felt sick. Was Patricia really sick? According to her medical records, she had some minor memory issues, but was nowhere near incompetent. Her previous doctor had no concerns about her decision-making ability, but Derek and Margaret found a different doctor who was willing to support their claims. They'd done this before successfully. Patricia had died in a nursing home while Derek and Margaret spent her money. Now they were trying the same strategy with me. How did they get away with it? Patricia was truly alone. No close friends, no other family members, no one to question their story. You're different, Leonard. You have a community, people who know you well. That's what's going to save you. But I realized something else. If I hadn't accidentally heard that phone conversation, I'd be just as helpless as Patricia had been. Margaret would have gradually isolated me, convinced my friends and neighbors that I was declining, made me doubt my own perceptions until I accepted their control. James, I want them prosecuted. Both of them. We'll have grounds. Elder abuse, filing false reports, conspiracy to commit fraud. But first, we have to win this guardianship hearing. That evening, I called my neighbor Henry Harrison. He'd lived across the street for 8 years, and we'd become good friends. I told him everything. Leonard, I've seen you every day for months. You're sharper than men half your age. Margaret's been lying. Will you testify to that? Absolutely, and Leonard, I've never liked that girl. Always seemed fake to me. One by one, I called my Thursday night card group, my church friends, my former co-workers. Everyone agreed to testify. Everyone was outraged by Margaret's deception. I wasn't alone. Margaret had underestimated that. The guardianship hearing was set for Friday morning at the Maricopa County Courthouse. By Thursday evening, we'd assembled our defense like a military operation. James Patterson had prepared a thick folder of evidence: Dr. Williams' cognitive assessment, character statements from 12 witnesses, bank records showing responsible financial management, and my clean driving record. Most importantly, he'd had the recording of Margaret's phone conversation professionally authenticated. Tomorrow, she's going to tell the judge, "You're incompetent," James explained during our final preparation meeting. "She'll claim you need immediate protection, but we're going to show the judge exactly what she's really trying to protect: her own financial interests." Janet had done her own investigation. I pulled Patricia's social services file from Tucson. The pattern is identical, Leonard. Same claims, same progression, same ultimate outcome. Derek and Margaret have developed a system for elder exploitation. I'd spent the week documenting my daily activities, creating a log that proved my independence: shopping receipts, restaurant visits, library checkouts, church attendance, a paper trail showing an active, engaged 71-year-old managing his own life successfully. But I'd also prepared something else, something that would show Margaret exactly how much I'd learned about her real character. Friday morning arrived cold and clear. I dressed in my best suit, the navy blue one I'd worn to my wife's funeral 5 years earlier. Today felt just as significant. Margaret and Derek were already in the courtroom when I arrived with James. She looked confident, almost victorious. Derek sat beside her, wearing an expensive suit I was sure they couldn't afford. They'd probably bought it with money from Patricia's estate. Judge Helen Santos called the hearing to order at 9 a.m. sharp. She was a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd seen every family tragedy imaginable. Margaret took the stand first. She spoke with tears in her eyes about her beloved father's declining mental state, her worry about his safety, her desperate desire to help him before he hurt himself or others. "He's become confused and disoriented," she testified. "Last month, he called me 3 times in one day asking the same question about his insurance. He left the stove on overnight. He's been forgetting to take his medications." She was a convincing liar, emotional, detailed, concerned. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have believed her myself. Derek testified next, supporting her claims with his own observations of my decline. He spoke about finding expired food in my refrigerator, my confusion about simple tasks, my increasing isolation from friends and family. Every word was fabricated, but they delivered their lies with such sincerity that I saw the judge taking notes, nodding thoughtfully. When James cross-examined Margaret, his questions were precise and devastating. "Mrs. Margaret, how often do you visit your father?" "At least once a month, sometimes more when I'm concerned about him." "According to his neighbor, Mr. Harrison, you visited exactly twice in the past 6 months. Which statement is true?" Margaret's confidence flickered. "Well, I call him regularly." "Yes, you do. And during one of those calls, you made some interesting statements about your father's future. Would you like me to play that recording for the court?" The color drained from her face. Derek shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I don't know what you're talking about," but James was already setting up the audio equipment. Judge Santos leaned forward, suddenly very interested. "Your Honor," James said, "I'd like to present evidence of the petitioner's true motives for seeking guardianship of her father." Margaret's lips were moving, but no sound was coming out. She finally understood that her carefully constructed lies were about to crumble in the most public, devastating way possible. "We'll sell Dad's house, put him in a trashy care home, and keep half the money." Margaret's voice filled the courtroom through the speakers, clear and unmistakable. Judge Santos's expression hardened with each word of the conversation. "Social services will believe anything we tell them. Old man living alone, probably unsafe." Derek's voice followed, equally damning. "The key is getting guardianship. Once we have legal control, he can't fight us on anything." I watched Margaret's face as her own words condemned her. The tears she'd shed during testimony had dried up, replaced by raw panic. She looked at Derek, at her lawyer, at the judge, searching for someone who might save her from the disaster unfolding around her. "Dad's house is worth $400,000. Even after we pay for the cheapest nursing home we can find, we'll have plenty left over for our mortgage." Judge Santos stopped the recording. The courtroom was silent except for the soft clicking of the court reporter's machine. "Mrs. Margaret," the judge said, her voice like ice, "do you recognize those voices?" Margaret opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her lawyer whispered urgently in her ear, but she just stared at the speakers as if they might somehow take back what they'd revealed. Your Honor, James said, the petitioner has filed false reports with social services for 6 months, fabricating incidents of cognitive decline and safety concerns. This is not a daughter trying to protect her father. This is a criminal conspiracy to commit elder abuse and financial exploitation. I object. Margaret's lawyer finally found his voice. This recording was obtained without consent. In Arizona, Judge Santos interrupted, single-party consent is sufficient for recording phone conversations. The objection is overruled. Janet stood up in the gallery. Your Honor, I am Janet Rodriguez, the social services supervisor who received the petitioner's false reports. We verified that every incident she described was fabricated. The fire department has no record of emergency calls to Mr. Leonard's address. His neighbors confirm none of the alleged safety incidents occurred. Margaret slumped in her chair as if the air had been let out of her. Derek was staring at his hands, probably calculating how many years they might spend in prison. Furthermore, James continued, we've discovered this is not the first time the petitioners have attempted this scheme. Derek's mother, Patricia, was subjected to identical false claims before her death 2 years ago. Judge Santos looked at Margaret with undisguised disgust. Petition for guardianship is denied. Mr. Leonard, you are clearly competent to manage your own affairs. Bailiff, please escort these individuals out of my courtroom before I hold them in contempt. As Margaret and Derek were led away, I heard her voice one last time. Dad, please. This is all a misunderstanding. We were just trying to help. Still lying, even caught red-handed with evidence of her conspiracy, she couldn't admit what she'd done. Judge Santos turned to me. Mr. Leonard, I apologize that you had to endure this ordeal. Your daughter's actions represent a serious abuse of the legal system and a betrayal of family trust. Outside the courthouse, James shook my hand. Leonard, that recording saved your life. Without it, her testimony might have been convincing enough. Janet hugged me tight. I'm so proud of you for fighting back. Too many elderly people just give up when their families turn against them. But the real satisfaction came 3 weeks later. Margaret and Derek were arrested on charges of elder abuse, conspiracy to commit fraud, and filing false reports with government agencies. The district attorney's office was taking their case seriously, especially after discovering the pattern with Patricia. Their lawyer called James, hoping to negotiate a plea deal. Margaret wanted to apologize, to make amends, to somehow repair our relationship. I told James to tell her lawyer exactly what I thought about that. Some broken things can't be fixed, I said. Margaret and Derek faced criminal charges that resulted in 18 months in jail and 5 years probation. They were ordered to pay restitution for investigation costs and banned from working in healthcare or social services. Their mortgage company foreclosed when Derek lost his job due to his criminal record. Margaret's name was added to the state elder abuse registry, ensuring she could never again exploit vulnerable adults. Derek was terminated from his new job when his conviction became public record, and their financial situation collapsed completely under the weight of legal fees and lost income. The house they tried to steal my money to save was sold at auction for a fraction of its value, leaving them with nothing but debt and shame. I still live in my house in Phoenix, tending my garden and playing cards with my Thursday night group. Sometimes I think about the daughter I used to know, the little girl who cried over a broken vase. But that child grew into a woman who tried to break her father's life for money. And some betrayals teach you that the most dangerous enemies are the ones who know exactly how much they can hurt you. Subscribe to Jake's Revenge for more gripping true stories of justice and redemption.